Hey everybody, it's August 24th, day 24 of RPGaDay a month 2024. Today's prompt is Acclaimed advice, and wow, that's a tough one. I would say there's a lot of good advice to be found if you go out there on the internet, to message boards, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos. There's also a lot of bad advice out there. I think probably because, the advice is only good if it's applicable to what you're trying to do. So it's very hard to give broad advice because, the game you're playing may have different rules, different expectations, different procedures, a different sort of style of play, or a different purpose for play. And so you can't just take advice that works in one role-playing game necessarily and have it work in another, because they're I think implicit in every role-playing game itself, there's a way of playing that emerges by the way the rules are written out and structured and how things work. It sort of sets a tone, not just maybe for the setting or the genre, but even for the type of game it is. Playing even different editions of D&D will give you a slightly different take on medieval fantasy role-playing, right? If you lean into original D&D, AD&D, particularly first edition AD&D, you get a sort of more sword and sorcery vibe, I think, than from second edition AD&D onward. You start to move into more of a high fantasy for certain, although I think high fantasy is also there in certain elements of original or first edition AD&D at least. Or you can play different sci-fi fantasy, sci-fi role-playing games, but playing Star Wars versus Star Trek versus Traveler versus Alien or Mothership or something like that gives you different, just in the way the rules are set up and what they pull for you to do, right? So it's hard to give, advice. Maybe my advice is be careful where you get your advice and make sure the advice you're getting is for the type of game you're trying to run based on the game you're running, but also just what you and your friends want out of that game experience, because different tables can play the actual same role-playing game for different reasons, and a lot of games are flexible enough to give you different approaches. Most games say the rules are guidelines, adjust, modify, or suspend rules as you see fit with the group you're playing with, and so a lot of game masters do that. So I'm trying to circle back around and see if there's actually, really acclaimed advice that transcends that. I think one, know who you're playing with, again, would be one. What's the purpose? Why are we here? What does everybody want out of the game? Session zero may be what I think is acclaimed advice, whether it's been formal or informal. I don't think it's you're seeing a reference to a session zero more and more in the core rule books of different games that come out. But I think that started more as a concept with online discussions about how to prepare for new campaigns and how to solve problems in role-playing games. Is always having a session zero where everybody who's playing sort of says, whether it's really formal or really informal, they kind of charter out why we're here and what kind of game we want to play and what are kind of the boundaries of what we do and don't want. And is this sort of backyard rules, beer and pretzels, hey, low stakes, it's okay if we're all kind of silly and goofing around, or is this something where we want to take it seriously and strict follow the rules, let the dice fall where they lay, and just deal with the consequences? Those are good discussions to have. Things like lines and veils. What's out of bounds? What do people just what do we not want to, topics or areas or activities we just don't want to depict or mention or go to. So a good session zero is probably some of the most acclaimed advice, although I can't attribute it to any one person. One thing, I guess, one other thing on advice that I think is good advice, although maybe not for the reason I originally thought, it's Gary Gygax is famously quoted in the DMG as talking about the need to keep strict records of time. And he's talking about a campaign. You need to know how many days pass, because particularly as characters are engaged in activities, throughout the adventure plus downtime, they need to train by AD&D rules. Your clerics and magic users are sometimes want to craft scrolls or items. Well, there's a time investment in that, and so keeping track of the passage of time and what everybody is up to during that time is important for a campaign. Also, even if you're just sort of keeping track of the days, it helps you sort of flavor in, changes in the season and weather and things like that if they become important. A lot of people don't do that, but it can add some flavor to the game if that's what you want. I think, though, timekeeping is a very good thing to attend to, probably in all games. Broadly, I think you don't have to do it if that's not what you want, but my experience has been it does make the game a little bit better when you pay a closer attention to time, because that's when you can help maintain a sense of urgency. If the quest that the people are on or the task at hand is something that has to have logically has a deadline, you've got to you can use time to create that sense of urgency. Of course, you have to have a backup plan. What happens if the deadline hits and they haven't achieved the objective or finished the quest? What happens then, right? So you do need to be mindful of that. But if you want to create that tension, that tracking of time works very well. And particularly if you want to use a game where people actually have to use their resources. Like, are they running out of food and water? Have they used their torches and their lantern oil? How often do they have to rest? If you get in a habit of tracking time, and I think my personal advice on that, I don't know if this is awesome advice, but it's my personal advice, is proceduralize that. Even if you're playing a game that doesn't have it, look at what makes sense for that game and try to proceduralize it so that you just get in the habit of ticking off units of time. Whether it's 10 minutes, 20-minute units, half an hour, whatever it is. Get used to ticking off those units of time so that you know when to, say, oh, well, I guess the day's probably ending about now. I don't know how many times I've been in a situation where I kind of go, well, I wonder, how long have they been up to this? Maybe it's time to say the sun is going down. I found that if I just have a habit of just a little sheet there at the table with me where I tick off every time I'm, classically you'd say in BX, anything outside of combat by default takes 10 minutes because that's a turn, right? You're searching a room, that takes a turn. You're resting for a minute to kind of make sure that you take a drink of water and eat a ration so you don't start your day. That's a turn. Any kind of activity that's worth describing or has significance as a turn, that's 10 minutes. That makes it very easy to track the course of the day. And you can change that for your game. But so I guess that would be my advice. Broadly, have a session 0, but to you as a game master, if you want to kind of make things a little more fun, consider keeping track of time and give yourself a procedure or a routine that you use as a game master to do that. And let the players know you're doing it so they can buy into it and it's fun for everybody. All right, that's a kind of a long one for what I've been doing for RPGaDay, but that'll do it for now. So I will be back tomorrow. Till then, take care of yourself and try to make someone happy today.